Hello there everyone and welcome to Burnt Toaster Productions. I'm your host, Burnt Toaster. As you all could likely glean from the title, Rock is back. Roll will be there too, just in a different form. For the uninitiated, there's a little thing in the top right corner of your screen that will take you to the Dragon's Dogma Tetanus Man run in which Rock and Roll made their debut. Now, I will warn you, there will likely be some screen tearing here and there because the capture card I got isn't the best. It was cheap and it allowed me to have some experience with the setup. It'll serve for now until I can get a better one. But enough sitting around and doing nothing, let's get to those rules. The rules are pretty simple. Only rusty weapons can be used. Resurrection files are not allowed. Potions and food are fine. Physique, accuracy, and any magic cannot be upgraded at all. Everything else can be upgraded though. None of the dog attributes can be upgraded. I wish I could set them to a passive state, but alas, there's nothing I can do about it. I can only be knocked out 3 times. Fable 2 is pretty easy and doesn't feature death for the hero, so I felt like this limit was good enough since I'll be dealing a sad amount of damage. And that's all. Let's jump into this run. As is usually the case, I start as a child forced to survive in the streets of Bowerstone, Old Town. Rose and Rock are huddled around a fire while Rose goes on about wanting to live in Castle Fairfax. Then there's some racket from a moderately audible range, which means I finally get some control over the hero. On our way there, a guy stops Rose and says something about an offer for food. I ignore it and turn my attention to the large crowd in front of me. Looks like a traveling merchant is in town and selling random items. Things along the lines of a magic mirror that makes you beautiful as long as you look into it, except it only works in complete darkness. Yeah, looks like he's selling garbage. But he is selling an Old Kingdom artifact for 5 gold, but that's because he thinks it's garbage. It's a music box that will grant the user a single wish. Rose says it's BS because magic isn't real, and Teresa basically convinces Rose to at least try it out. Which means I have to go around and do small tasks for people. Things like posing for a picture, killing some beetles, yoinking a bottle of booze from a thief, finding and turning in arrest warrants, then finally delivering a letter to someone. All pretty easy stuff and nothing all that exciting. Once we complete all the jobs and have 5 gold, we can buy that music box. Rose puts the box down, turns the handle a few times, and makes her wish. The music box vanishes after spinning like a Beyblade, and with Rose understandably disappointed, we have to go to bed. But we do get a dog, which is some comfort, I suppose. Of course, things aren't all that simple, and we get called to Castle Fairfax. Rose believes it's her wish coming true, so she wakes Rock up to go with her. Thankfully, with the magic of video editing, you won't have to deal with me being forced to move at the pace of a geriatric snail. So we get to meet Lord Lucian, who's the current owner of the castle. He apparently researches Old Kingdom artifacts. Lucian heard that we bought the box and wanted to see it. Rose explains that it vanished after it was used. Lucian then says that the box itself isn't what he's interested in, but the fact that we were able to use it. He says he's working on something wonderful and requires individuals of particular talents. To find out if we have them, he tells us to stand in this circle. Once we both get within the circle, a light is brought forth. Lucian touches the light and his hand gets shocked or something like that. He rushes over to his desk to find out what happened. Turns out neither of us are one of the 3 heroes and one of us is the 4th. Lucian then pulls out his flintlock and shoots Rose. Then in a cutscene, Rock gets blasted through a window. But as you could probably tell, our boy is still alive. A bunch of time passes and we finally get our first taste of adventure. We are armed with a rusty sword and a crossbow. The only issue is crossbows don't come in a tetanus flavor, so to speak, so I can't use it. Anyway, our task is to go through an old tomb to find the Chamber of Fate. Once I get in there, I start making my way through. It isn't too long before some giant beetles burrow out of the ground. Like I said, I can't use the crossbow for combat since it isn't rusty. Instead, I strike them down with melee combat. Right now, the sword is at an appropriate level, and that means I don't have to worry about damage too much. They all die in one hit. Eventually, I reach a flit switch, which requires me to use my crossbow to activate it. Since I don't have to kill or strike an enemy with it, it's fine to use it in order to progress. I fight another group of beetles, then some more, and come across another flit switch. I did take the liberty to explore a little for some valuables and a rusty hammer. Now if you, the viewer, want to attempt this run, you can use whatever weapon you want. so long as it's rusty. I personally wanted to keep using the sword since that's what Rock originally started out with in the Dragon's Dogma Tetanus Man run. Plus, I believe it is the weakest melee weapon in the game, so I took it upon myself to make it a little more challenging. Anyway, I finally make it to the Chamber of Fate and got the ability to upgrade Rock. For the first level up, you have to get one level of a spell. I chose Shock simply because it's the first option in the menu. The wonderful thing about Fable 2 is I can unlearn things, so I forget Shock and press onward through the Cullis Gate. Of course, there's a large group of beetles waiting for me which aren't any match for my rusty sword. Thankfully, they gave me enough XP to get the first level of Dexterous Styles, which allows me to roll around in combat. After using the sword as beetle pesticide, I make my way to Bowerstone. However, the road is closed due to bandit activity. Or in other words, I get to fight Thag and his crew. His crew isn't all that hard to take out, but Thag himself is fairly tanky and likes to block after so many melee strikes, which causes the fight to take a little longer than usual but ends in his defeat. He did have some captives, which told me the key to their cage is in Thag's hut. When I grab the key and head outside, a guy named Dick stops me. He tells me he paid for those slaves and will give me money for the key. Naturally, Rock is a money-making man and gives the key to him. But Rock isn't a fan of slavery and kills Dick to get the key back and let those people out. Now I can start making my way to Bowerstone. Bowerstone has some shops and I immediately went to the smith to acquire a rusty ranged implement. I settled with a clockwork rifle since it was the weakest one he had. I then sell the 2 amethysts I found to the jeweler to get some money back. I decided to make my way to the barber to get Rock's appearance right. I went with the center parting hairstyle and the soup trap mustache. That's the closest thing they have in this game. Since I had some leftover money, I went ahead and did my best to get Rock's starting outfit, which consisted of a crop top jacket, explorer's trousers, and explorer's boots. I of course dyed the clothes to make them look a little better. After being done with shopping, I went to the meeting spot Teresa told me to go to. Except she said she'll be delayed for a bit. I decided to use that time to make some money as a smith. When it's approximately 30 seconds until her arrival, I slept in the inn for 7 days straight. I wasn't too happy about having a rifle and wanted to refresh the smith's stock. When I went back there, he had a rusty clockwork pistol, which I bought. I sold the rifle and went to meet Teresa. She gives me some expositional info about the tattered spire, which Lucian is rebuilding. Basically, it'll give him the power to do whatever he wants, and since he has proven to be a bit unstable, I have to stop him. I make my way through Old Town, and now it's a bustling community. I also got a discount since I helped that guard with his arrest warrants when Rock was just a wee little pebble. I take a look around the shops and find nothing that I want at the moment, so I press onward to find the first hero, the Hero of Strength. I enter Rookridge and see an opportunistic fellow picking at the remains of a carriage that was attacked. He's not really hurting anyone, so I let him be, but that carriage does at least give a slight warning that bandits are nearby. It's not like they're especially dangerous or anything, even more so since most of them opted to use their rifles to try to take Rock out from a distance. Little did they know, Rock is a braver soul than most men and ended up rushing them since they had the high ground. After dealing with those undesirable individuals, I leveled up speed. It allows me to attack and reload my clockwork pistol slightly faster. I keep moving forward, fight another group of ruffians, and find a Dog of War book. I can't use it for its actual purpose, but I can at least sell it for a decent sum when I get back to Bowerstone. Of course, I had to fight some more bandits, but they're in fewer numbers than the previous group, so they fell without issue. I then reach the destroyed bridge, jump down, and meet this guy off of a tiny coastal area known as a beach. He's right next to a cave and is wanting to look for his son. There's not much of a choice here besides just killing the guy or letting him come with me. Rock is moderately reasonable, so this man will be mostly left alone. In this unpleasant cave are hobs. Hobs aren't too difficult to deal with. Once you take out a certain amount of a group or kill one that's a little more impressive, the rest will run and scatter like the cowards they are. But they at least show some intelligence, oftentimes using ambush tactics. I say this because that concerned father hears his son and runs through this storage area. However, I have knowledge from playing this game over the years, so I smack a crate and get those little rats to come out unprepared. After my veritable slaughter of hobs, I ran over to the father. Looks like this door is kind of stuck, but he told me to try to find another way through while he jimmied it around. As you could expect, things didn't go quite so well for this man because his son was turned into a hob and I had to put him down. He then passes out, likely from shock. There's nothing else I can do for him, so I keep moving forward and fight some more hobs. And we get introduced to a new type, the kamikaze hob as I like to call them. They have practically no health, but they can sneak up on you if you're too preoccupied. When all the fighting is done, I am free to leave this cave and make my way to Oakfield. Once I'm out, I turn my attention to these 3 bandits sitting around the collapsed bridge. Let's just say it didn't go too well for them. And before you know it, I've made it to Oakfield. I can already tell there is a bit too much bloom and saturation in this area. I guess the reason for that is it's supposed to be one of the lushest regions in Albion. Don't worry though, I'll do my best to fix it in post so it doesn't burn your retinas. I need you guys to be able to see after all. Anyway, I have to make my way to the abbot at the Temple of Light. Before I go over there though, I do a little shopping. I get some monk gloves for a rock and the collar of the Holy Sky for the dog. Collars allow you to rename him and, well, minimally change his appearance. Due to the flavor text associated with this collar, I named the dog Roll. I told you Roll would come back at some point. Without any further distractions, it's time to go see the abbot. He'd like to send someone with one of his monks and understandably would rather send someone who is known to be able to hold their own. To be fair, we just got here and there's a pretty large issue to resolve. There are bandits that need to be taken care of, and that's the only way to get someone to repair the bridge. The quest giver is none other than Barnum, or as I like to call him, British Jim Varney. He's a bit of a goofball and seemingly keeps making unsound business decisions. However, he always gets right back up and tries something different. Anyway, he had bought a deed to the bridge to set up a toll and rake in the gold. Except the bridge was destroyed by bandits. Now that I have my task, it's time to spread some justice. I make my way to Rookridge and fight 2 bandits without any trouble. I find myself in the old tavern, which has some bandits looking to ambush Rock. Rock has other plans that involve disposing of the trash. Yeah, Rock has no love for bandits after the constant beatings they gave him and his party in Dragon's Dogma. Regardless, we have to get rid of the leader, Dash. Dash is supposedly pretty quick, which is why the guards have had no success in catching him. I'll not bore you with the details of all the fighting I had to go through. It's not exactly quick with a couple of rusty weapons. But I annihilated all the bandits standing in my way, leveled up toughness for more health, and rolled trapped Dash, which means I can gun him down. After Dash is done for, I can return to British Jim Varney and turn in this quest. As is usually the case, it's not enough to impress the abbot, so I decided to go and help Bell the Archaeologist. These are quick and easy quests that will give me some renown to convince the abbot. So after going around and digging for a couple of scrolls, I can return and escort his monk through the cave. I get over there to finally meet Sister Hannah. With all the pleasantries finished, we head into the cave. The first part is nothing special, just stand on a pressure plate and wait for the vessel to be filled. On the way back to the central chamber, Rock gets the pleasure of fighting some bony boys. Hollow men can be a bit of a nuisance due to the fact that they'll sprint at the hero to get close, but for the most part, they're pretty weak. Even more so due to the fact that I'm having to fight on a natural bridge. Just use flourishes to knock them off of the bridge and you'll have very few problems. After a bit of fighting, we make our way to the central chamber and have to repeat this process a couple of more times. But instead of fighting more on the way back, Rock has to defend Sister Hannah while she collects the water. It's not too hard since there isn't exactly a lose condition. However, when the hollow men hit her, the collection of the water is halted. So after defending her with a rusty pistol, we get back to the central chamber and the next door gets a little stuck. Roll runs ahead and ends up decapitating a hollow man. What a good boy. After a bit of time, the door opens and it's time to go through an arena of sorts. As you can guess, it means fighting continuously spawning hollow men until the headless hollow man makes an appearance. This isn't hard with rusty weapons, but it isn't exactly the smoothest fight in the world either. This armored headless bony boy is tanky and has access to a bit of magic. But he is headless, which means he can't tell where I'm at until I hit him. It takes a while, but Rock emerges victorious. Thankfully, this is pretty much the end of the quest, as all I have to do is wait. When we get to the final chamber, we're interrupted by a monk who tells us that one of Lucian's men is threatening the abbot with a gun. I didn't mention this earlier, but the abbot is Hannah's father, so she yoinks a stone hammer from a statue and rushes off to try to save him. It's too little too late as her father is shot and killed. I'm assuming she was enraged by this and she smacked that man with a big stone hammer. Youch. After that, the ritual takes place, and with Hannah not happy about the monks acting like nothing ever happened, Teresa appears to guide her and take her back to the guild. Now we have our first hero, and it's time to look for the second. Even though I can start working on getting to Garth right now, I hold off on doing that. Fable 2 has certain parts that require a specific amount of renown, which is likely a way to pad out the game length, since Fable 2 really isn't all that lengthy if you really think about it. To get to Garth, I'll need some more renown, so I settled with doing the quest, The Summoners. Only thing I need to do for this quest is go to the quest givers and then head to the cemetery to put the dead back to sleep. There's 100 in total that have to be put down. Not that bad, all things considered. Hollow men aren't exactly known for incredible endurance. The main strategy is just to knock them over and stab them while they're down, which would be perfect if I could get the execution to work properly, but the game doesn't want that to happen. After I eventually take out the first group, I swear I feel like the game is working against me, since the little golden crumb trail is taking me back to the first area I just got done with. Even with the golden crumb trail failing me, I find some bony boys just hanging around and decide to take them on. They're still not that much of a challenge. With 2 groups down, we've got 60 more to deal with. Since the golden trail decided to start working now, I followed it to the next group. Once again, my execution of these brainless bony boys gets stuck because the game just won't recognize the input half the time. To be fair, this game is fairly old now, having been originally released in 2008. Jesus, I feel old. That aside, these hollow men hardly stand a chance and get pushed around like that small kid at the playground. Once that group is done, I only have 40 more to go. At the next area, there was some digging that needed to be done, and this fella decided to be polite and wait until Rock was finished. Of course, the only thing that Rock got was a hat, so he decided to take his frustrations out on the hollow men. And let's just say they won't be coming back anytime soon. But hey, Rock only has one more group to go through for the quest to be completed. Naturally, after I make it to the last location, the hollow men don't last too long. And now I can grab the spooky book that caused all this in the first place. I run back to the twins and hand them the book so they can undo the chaos they have caused. One of them reads the undo spell, and that's it. After that huge mess, I head back to the guild, and Teresa tells me to look for Garth and Brightwood. Well, there's no time like the present, I suppose. I do want to go ahead and progress the story at least a little bit more, so Rock heads over there. Not much is going on in terms of reaching the place, just a small ambush by some hobs that didn't live to see the light of day. But as Rock gets closer to Garth's current location, things take a turn for the worst. Looks like Lucian's men are hunting for Garth as well, and this means I get the wonderful pleasure of trying to fight them off while making my way to the mystical magic man. Surprising no one, they're fairly tough. It's fine if I can end them while they're on the ground or if I knock them off of a ledge, but it's not something that's guaranteed. The physics are a little wonky in this game. Once the ones outside are taken care of, I have to go inside and deal with a few more goons, which is actually fairly easy this time around since the first floor only has 2 of them. Roll finished one of them off, and I tried to finish the other, but the game had other plans. Until I knocked him over again and finally ended him. With the threat dealt with, Rock can push onward, and this time there's a whole group of them. There's also a pretty low wall that I can take advantage of. At least it means I won't always have to waste my time trying to take them out while they're down. It was actually a really quick fight thanks to that low wall. Since all of the fighting is done, I try to make my way up to Garth, and I put emphasis on try because a bunch of objects which are on fire are in my way. Looks like one of Lucian's lackeys got to him and, well, just kidnapped the man. Because Garth isn't going to be using it anymore, Rock takes a quick nap in a bed to heal. As soon as Rock wakes up, it's time to spend some XP. I settled on another level of toughness and speed for obvious reasons. Anyway, I head back to the guild to get an updated objective. Teresa pointed me to the Cow and Corset and Bowerstone. I have to talk to Jeeves about getting some information on Lucian, but I decided to take on a small bounty hunting job to have a little extra money. All I need to do is go to Old Town and take out some hobs chilling out in a cellar. It's a quick way to make 750 gold. With that done, it's time to talk to Jeeves. He knows where Lucian's diary is being kept, but will not speak of its whereabouts until I pay his price, which is 1,000 gold. Well, I already have the money on me at the moment, so I give him 1k gold and head off to the location. As is usually the case, there's always something that makes my experience with this run not so fun. This is the first encounter with a troll. Now luckily it's only a forest troll, but the big problem with trolls in Fable 2 is the simple fact that melee isn't viable at all. You need either some magic or ranged weaponry to deal with it. On top of that, you have to aim for little nerve tendrils to kill it. After one tendril is completely destroyed, the others will hide and you'll have to dodge some attacks. This then repeats until the troll is finally dead. Well, at least it feels like this pistol is still semi-viable. With the troll finally dead, Rock can dig for the diary. Once he has it, it's time to return to the guild. But because I want to be doubly safe with the amount of renown I have, I go to accept the quest Cold Comfort Farmer. The premise is quite simple. A crew of bandits are making life hell for innocent people as usual, so Rock will put a stop to it. There's not much that goes on with this quest, it's pretty simple really. Go to the farmer, accept the quest, go to the bandit camp, and kill all of them. Well, except the boss, because the farmer, who used to be a guard, wants to turn him in. Now that that's dealt with, I can return back to the guild and give Teresa the diary. Turns out Lucian is recruiting new men at Westcliff. Specifically, winners of the Crucible are chosen. Hammer already got a bit of a head start because she rushed that Colossus gate like a bull. Before I even came close to reaching her, some bandits wanted to try their luck with Rock. Best way to sum it up is that their luck was stuck between Rock and a hard place. Anyway, I finally made it over there. Apparently she had been waiting for ages. Sorry, Hammer, but if Teresa's Colossus gate actually worked for Rock like it did you, I would have been here much sooner. She really needs to contact someone about the warranty on that thing. Since I'm here with Hammer, we start our journey. Our first stop is the Bandit Coast. Rock is going to love clearing this place. Not much to really tell, the name of the place is pretty self-explanatory. It's littered with bandits and you have to make your way through them. As long as you continue to somewhat abuse flourishes, you're pretty much golden. There is usually a ledge in any encounter area. If there aren't any, just pray to RN Jesus that you can get lucky and take them out while they're down. After a few battles, I have enough XP to level up brutal styles, just so I can occasionally capitalize on chain attacks. Things get a little interesting once Hammer and Rock make their way to a bandit fort. Most notably, this is the first encounter with a highwayman. And there are a bunch of bandits all over the place. The highwayman is the primary target due to his more tanky and quick nature. All Rock had to do was hit him with a flourish and the guy got stuck on some geometry, promptly dying in one hit. You'd think it wouldn't take super long, but it did. Apparently there were a good 2 to 3 bandits hiding out somewhere. I don't know if they were too scared or too drunk to make a move, but they waited until we cleared everyone else out. Once the last of the ruffians is defeated, we can move on to the next area, Westcliff. Naturally, we don't reach the town of the same name, we have to go through a forest. Name a better time to introduce the doggos that are the bane of Rock. That's right, if bandits weren't enough for you masochists, we've got balverines. And let me tell you, balverines aren't a joke. They are super tanky, fairly fast, and have an annoying clawing combo to boot. I think after this first encounter I have turned more into a cat person. It wouldn't have been so bad if blocking was a little less, funky in Fable 2, but hey, I decided to do this to myself, so I have to live with the consequences. This first battle with 2 balverines went on for a good 3 minutes, which doesn't bode well for my sanity, and by extension, Rock's sanity. Of course, there's a damsel in distress that Rock really doesn't trust. He's got a funny feeling about this one and attacked her pretty quickly, but due to the weak damage output of his weapons, he gave up on it after a little bit. Some more balverine battles later, Rock decided to shoot her one more time, and that prompted her to let out an evil-sounding laugh and hop into the trees. I guess Rock wasn't crazy after all. Anyway, we have one more battle with a couple of puppies, and then we can finally enter the creepy temple. What fun! As you could likely infer, there are more balverines to wade through, except this time we have to go through a test of endurance while trying to find a way out of here. Balverine after balverine swiping and pouncing. I think I felt my sanity leave my soul for a little while. It was pretty tough. I actually came pretty close to losing one of my 3 lives. But eventually Hammer saw Rock looking at a specific pillar that was weak and could easily be made into a bridge. But Rock had to defend her while she knocked it over. You can bet as soon as the white balverine came running into frame, I nearly defecated in my pants. I'm already having a tough time fending off 2 other balverines. Throwing a white one into the mix was a wrench I wasn't wholly ready for. That's okay though, I don't have to exactly stay there and engage the thing in combat for super long, especially since Hammer just made us a bridge. Once the bridge was down, I ran for that exit. I'm pretty sure if I tried to stay there and fight the white balverine, I would have died since I'm 90% sure I ran out of healing potions and food. Once we get through the exit, we're right where we want to be, the town of Westcliff. It's a bit of a colorful place, to put it nicely. I decided not to waste any time and approached the entrance to the Crucible, and I'm happy to say Rock is famous enough to go on through. It's time to start this bonanza of slaughter. First round is just giant beetles, nothing too crazy, they're pretty weak. The toughest ones to kill are the red ones. They're tanky and have a way to close the distance unlike the rest. Still, they can't do much against flourishes. Before you know it, Rock has killed the beetles and it's time for the next round. In reality, it took me a solid 3 minutes just to get through round 1, which means I'm definitely not getting any perfect rounds. But who cares about some stupid special prize? Rock just needs to stay alive and win. The next consists of hobs. There's not much to really tell, it's just a really large hob encounter as far as I'm concerned. I had a tendency to focus on the ranged ones first, if only because they're annoying since they can and will interrupt a flourish. Once they're dealt with, I switched focus to the melee variety. This basically repeats until the third wave is gone. The third round consists of more hobs, but of the magical and explosive variety. My focus was mostly maintained on the magic ones since they could do some necromancy on command and have me fight their dead ancestors. Since I usually hate fighting more than what's absolutely needed, I have to target them first. If they die, their health dies. However, near the end of the round, I experienced some issues with my capture card. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but the video feed for me turned into a bit of a mess. Luckily, all I had to do was pause the recording and finagle with some things. I'm just glad it kept up until the end of that round. The fourth round was Hollow Men. Not much strategy to speak of, these bony boys aren't exactly the most agile. Keep using flourishes until none of them are moving anymore. You'll probably be done in roughly the same amount of time as me. Even though I'm pretty sure the game is being a bit rude by saying I killed them all in 6 minutes and 35 seconds when it was closer to 6 minutes and 15 seconds. But, oh well, not like it necessarily matters for this run. Time for the fifth round, which consists of bandits. It's not that rough of a round, it was actually fairly casual. Thanks to them spawning on a little bridge, I could flourish as soon as they spawned in and send them to their deaths. Other than that, I could just stab them. The most notable thing to happen was seeing this body aggressively undulate, which I don't think has happened to me in all of my years of playing this game. Besides someone's soul trying to stick itself back into their body, there wasn't much that went on. They're only bandits after all. Now that all the bandits lie dead, it's time to head to the next round. Which is more bandits. Man, they really could have spread out these rounds a little bit better. Anyway, the main thing with this round is that most of the enemies are further away and tend to default to ranged attacks. Oh, and there's the unending void. However, there will be highwaymen on occasion, and the waves go by without having you kill every enemy. But the round isn't too bad, it's usually pretty easy to knock them into the abyss that claims their souls. The highwaymen are the toughest ones since they aren't easily knocked down by flourishes. Although one thing I forgot to mention about flourishes is the fact that they provide some iframes. Just spam them and you'll be good to go. Eventually, the only living being standing in the arena is Rock, and it's time for a round I've been dreading. It's time to beat some balverines. I didn't like balverines all that much in the Fable stick run, but they don't compare to the paper shredders in Fable 2. So the first wave isn't too bad, you just have 3 standard balverines to fend off. But even the basic ones are pretty tanky. According to the game, it took me a good minute 38 to get through the first wave. The second wave has 2 standard balverines and 1 tougher variant. The strategy for the entire round was to flourish at anything and everything that moves. When the third wave came around, 3 minutes and 34 seconds had passed, so it took me a little less than 2 minutes to kill them all. And in the third wave, I've got a white balverine and a basic one to fight off. I'm not afraid of the basic one, it's the white one that has me the most worried. They're fairly tanky normally, so throw in the fact that I'm using rusty weapons and have not increased my strength or accuracy, you've got a battle of attrition going on. Well, bad news for you balverine lovers, I don't crack so easily. It took a nice little bit of fighting, but after roughly 6 minutes, I ended them both. So my lovely audience, it's time for the round that humbled me pretty quickly. The final round. Now I went into this fight thinking it'd be a piece of cake, but good gravy was I terribly wrong. It's time to fight the rock troll. I started out doing decent damage, which only increased my confidence. And, well, if Darkest Dungeon has taught me anything, overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer. Things started getting rocky at the home stretch. About halfway through, some hobs would spawn in and be a nuisance, as usual. I started running out of tendrils to shoot and there was only one left on its arm. But for whatever reason, I couldn't target it very well, even when I got myself behind the thing. Due to that complication, Rock got thrown around like a rag doll. To add even more frustration onto this single fight, I couldn't really get behind it very easily. It would keep turning while using an attack. So yeah, I hate rock trolls now. Thanks, Fable. After a grueling 13 or so minutes, Rock finally lands the last hit needed. To celebrate turning that rock troll into gravel, Rock proved he was the harder rock and danced on its grave. With that, the mandatory arena section is complete. I was so relieved by the end of it because that troll took all of my potion and food stock. Now I can go to the Tattered Spire and nab Mr. Spellslinger. But before doing that, I paid British Jim Varney a visit and gave him some investment money. Rock has plenty of gold, so a little dip isn't going to hurt him at all. While I was thinking of any other quests I wanted to do, one of the residents of Westcliff had said, "What a pretty girl," to Rock. After the ordeal of going through the Crucible, he was having none of it, and shot that man 3 times. And since I didn't feel like killing an entire population of people, I quickly traveled to Bowerstone Market to wait for things to cool down for a bit. While there, I took the liberty to update Rock's clothing, and now he's, well, looking like he had a mental breakdown. But I grabbed the hot pants because I immediately thought of Pierre. I also bought an eye patch, but later decided to remove it since Rock didn't look quite right with it on. Sensing that Rock had been forgiven for his crime of murder, he set out to Westcliff once more to continue his journey. Okay, I lied. I decided to go and protect the Temple of Light from the Temple of Shadows. It was a quick little foray and not really anything to talk about. It was mostly combat against hired thugs and then killing the shadow worshippers. Then Cornelius was up next. He summoned some minions a couple of times before fighting me and he died fairly soon after. Or as soon as he could with the weapons I'm using. But you're not here to listen to me regale a little bit of side content. So after the quest, I finally head back to Westcliff. The captain of the ship won't let me take my weapons, personal effects, or roll with me. So I have to leave roll and all my stuff with Hammer. Oh well, time to leave. Once the ship stops moving, I can finally get off and there's Lucian. Surprise, surprise, he's a bit of a nutcase. Regardless, he puts everyone to sleep and then when Rock wakes up, he's in a uniform. I don't know why they only gave him a headband when they shaved off his hair and glorious Tom Selleck-like mustache. If I have to look at this hideous creature, I want him to have a mask at the least. I guess I'll have to file a form with someone in logistics, but that sounds like too much work. Anyway, I have to report to the Commandant and receive orders. First, the Commandant does his best to show his authority and hits Rock. Rock has to thank him to keep all the experience he has accrued thus far. Feeling like HR isn't really a thing here, Rock simply obeys. He'll get his revenge soon enough. Some time passes and Rock is tasked with watching over some prisoners. They're not supposed to eat, so it's just a matter of waiting. The guard comes back and more time passes again. The Commandant wants to see Rock. Rock goes on through and receives his orders to kill Bob. Who's Bob? Some guy that came in with you when you first reached the Spire. The game tries to make you feel sympathetic for him, but really he's just some guy. The Commandant wants you to end his existence since his brain basically snapped and he's no longer useful. The game tries to pin this as an evil act, but Rock only does it so the guy doesn't die by some Darth Maul cosplayer that got a little carried away. It's more of a mercy killing than anything. Many years later, Rock was so good at his job, he got a promotion. That's right, he's an officer now. They grow up so fast. Anyway, the Commandant wants to see Rock again, so Rock has to report to him, again. Apparently a guard hadn't reported in, so Rock's job is to go and investigate. When I get over there, the guy is dead and Garth frees Rock from that collar. It's about time. There's one little issue. The quality of weapons here are steel, but there's no way to get around that, so for the run, it's only allowed in the Spire. Meaning once Rock makes it back to Albion, he'll have to switch back to his rusty weapons. Now that I don't have a collar, I'll be attacked on sight, which means Rock gets to see some action. They are Spire guards, so they aren't anything I haven't faced yet. Like most human enemies, flourishes are the best bet, either to knock them over and finish them or to push them off of a ledge. The real fight is with the Commandant. He is surprised by the betrayal, but honestly that just makes this fight all the sweeter. The fight is tough because the Commandant does have some ranged capabilities and can't be knocked down by flourishes. You'll also have some guards come in to help out. You're kind of stuck in this small bubble, but the enemies aren't. Yeah, it's not the most fun experience to say the least. The Commandant will also teleport around. Just keep an eye out on your surroundings and do your best to not get dogpiled by everyone. After some time of fighting, you'll have killed the Commandant and can finally make your escape. There's still some fighting, but nothing really noteworthy after that boss fight, if you could really call it that. Once you reach the ship, you'll be free. Ah, Oakfield. I never thought I'd love to have my retinas burned and my eyes to be irritated by the god-awful amount of bloom. Rock had spent 10 years in that hellhole, but Rock has also grabbed the Hero of Will, and Teresa convinced him to help take Lucian down. Once they leave, I can finally dress Rock in his normal apparel and head to Bowerstone to get his hair back to normal. I did take a little bit of time to get Rock a spiffy new outfit, but eventually I didn't think it really fit him too well. He's a simple man with simple needs and doesn't require flashy clothing. While I was still mulling over the outfit in my head, I went to see Hammer in Rookridge. After talking with Hammer, I have to get back to the guild for a debrief. Before that though, I settled on using the outfit he had been wearing. You know, the crop top jacket, hot pants, monk gloves, and noble's shoes. I kept the fancy shoes on because while Rock is simple in terms of needs, he wanted both comfort and style. Look at those legs. Anyway, back at the guild, Garth says he has a Cullis gate back at his place in Brightwood. We get over there and it seems Lucian's men are crawling all over the place. The good thing is we have a nice vantage point right here and Rock is a man of action. After shooting a couple of them, he decided to meet them head on. I will admit the fight is a little easier with Garth and Hammer both helping out, but at the same time they don't do anything too substantial. It's still the same old song and dance. Flourish, stab, and repeat until they're all dealt with. It didn't stay that simple forever though, as we get a new enemy, the Shard. And let me tell you, I have yet to find a sound strategy for defeating them with only rusty weapons. They're honestly tied with balverines in terms of annoyance, except you can only damage them when they're attacking, which makes them a bit worse than balverines now that I think about it. After feeling like I smashed my head through my monitor, the Shard is defeated and we can finally progress forward. Once we all make it to that Cullis gate Garth mentioned, it's time to focus on defense, in a manner of speaking. Hammer and I have to defend Garth while he gets the Cullis gate working, which means more fighting for me. I excluded Hammer in that sentence simply because she doesn't prove to be the most effective individual. Meanwhile, Rock is out here tossing people off the building and stabbing them while they're down. Due to the nature of this fight, I'll be skipping over most of it. It's a lot of the same enemies I've been fighting after all. Eventually, Garth gets it working and Rock goes through it, but something seemed to have happened while Rock was being transported. I guess the Cullis gate kind of malfunctioned and exploded. When Rock comes to, he's in a cage because of old Greg. I feel like that's a reference. Regardless, apparently Roll ran out into the fog and Greg here said he's likely dead. But I also know Roll is a resourceful little fellow, so I have nothing to worry about. It gets really foggy all of a sudden and I hear some screams. Next thing you know, Roll is back and gets the key off of Greg's body. Good riddance. That guy was kind of an asshole. Now that Roll has given Rock that key, it's time to get out of this hellhole. I take a little time to search the area for loot and there's nothing of note. I don't know what I was really expecting. After searching around, I decide to press on and that fog is back once again, which means it's the first encounter with a Banshee. Normally, Banshees are kind of annoying, but fairly easy to deal with. By this time, I'd be using master level weapons, but since Rock is kind of cursed to use only the weakest weapons possible, this fight goes on for a while. You can't immediately damage a Banshee as far as I know. First, you have to kill her unnatural offspring, which takes a bit with Rock, but is generally fairly easy to do. Just knock them down and stab them. Once all of them are dealt with, it's time to deal damage to the Banshee herself. I don't know if you can use melee against her in this weakened state, but I've always taken the American route and solved the problem with dealing with her using a firearm. So that's what I did. I used that terrible rusty clockwork pistol and look at that health bar go. Eventually I whittle her down and end her existence. Oh yeah, did I mention Banshees will actively taunt your character? I don't feel bad. She deserved it. Of course, after the fight, I noticed Rock gained a little weight from some of the food he shoveled into his mouth while fighting a Banshee. He really does look like an unhinged Tom Selleck if he let himself go. Well, now that the fighting is done, it's time to get a move on. But before Rock could move anywhere, a conga line of hollow men came rushing by. After that little mess, Rock can finally progress. There's not much that goes on. Most of the fighting consists of hollow men. Once Rock makes it around the end of the marshland, there are more bony boys to fight. The catch is, I've got to fight a hollow man elder. They're tankier, deal more damage, and have the ability to use some magic. But it was surprisingly easy to deal with as I used a flourish and took him out. Pushing forward a little bit more, there was another Banshee, which felt like it took a year to kill. After that, it's just a few more hollow men standing between Rock and Bloodstone. Once in Bloodstone, I look around at the shops for any interesting items, and there's pretty much nothing here that I want. Now that I've reached a point where I must talk with Reaver, I'll stick around and do a couple of quests. The first quest I decided to do is right here in Bloodstone. Toby. Toby wants to clean the streets by gathering some holy relics or something like that. First up is the Button of Eternal Hope, which is thankfully in a house in Bloodstone. Once I yoink it, I head back to Toby for the next item, which is the Wine of Forgiveness, also located in a house here. I find it and take it back. The next item is the Sacred Pie of Kindness. This one wasn't so smooth. I had to kill a man to get that pie because I didn't know where exactly it was. Once I bring it back, I have one more thing to do. I have to find a woman of ill repute and bring her back to him. Apparently for some ritual. Well, considering they're littering the streets, it's a simple enough task. Once that is done, Toby tells me he mustn't be disturbed and asks me to leave. The only thing I can do at the moment is find out more about him. Looks like Rock was played and Toby is just a scheming little rat. Rock is a no-nonsense type of person, and possibly broke a little bit mentally. There are two choices, scare Toby or kill him. Well, as I said, Rock was not very pleased about being played for a fool, so once Toby opened his door and stopped talking, Rock pulled out his pistol and ended Toby's existence. Naturally, since nothing is ever smooth and easy in Bloodstone, some woman shot at Rock. Rock had no choice but to end her as well. With some of the garbage in Bloodstone taken out, it's time to do another quest, rescuing Charlie. Some grandmother is worried about her grandson. It's Rock's job to go and bring him back. He's located in a tomb and is fighting off some hollow men. Charlie, or Charles, is trying to loot this tomb. Now, to be fair, Rock is underperforming with this damage, but able to keep Charles safe while he tries to open up the sarcophagus. The hollow men didn't have enough numbers to take Charles out. Once the undead stop coming over here, Charles requires some help opening the thing. Rock gets it open, and it looks like someone else came here before us. Remember Sam and Max? Yeah, this is where they found that book. After that disappointment, I have to try to get Charles out of here. But there's a slight issue. The bony boys are coming in as full-on hordes. It takes a while to get through them, and I don't really have an opening available to get out of the room. And there goes Charles. The game tells me to pick up his personal effects and gives me his signature hat. I was in the middle of combat when the window popped up, and now Rock is wearing his hat. But at least I don't have to worry about Charles, I guess. And let me tell you, it took a nice little while to get out of this tomb. The hollow men were consistently spawning in large numbers, and while I did my best to fight them off, I had to make a run for the exit. In my hurried state, I forgot about the hat, and Granny Miggins confused Rock for Charles. She then gave Rock an augment, which was Charles's birthday present. Oh well, nothing I can do about it now. I wanted to be doubly sure that I had enough renown, so I went to complete the quest Love Hurts. Victor the Gravekeeper is wanting me to collect body parts from a few locations and bring them back to him. Not much really happens in this quest. I fight some enemies and dig up the parts. The only interesting thing is the fact that these body parts belong to Lady Grey. Honestly, they're in pretty good condition considering how much time has passed. When I collect the head and bring it back to him, he finally spills beans on the whole reason he wanted the parts in the first place. This whole thing wasn't about bringing the dead back to life, but also to basically get him a woman, which makes me feel a little creeped out considering she'll still technically be a corpse. But he's not really hurting anyone, although forcibly removing a sentient being's will and inhibitions is a bit of a moral quandary. Since he has all of the parts, it's time to start. Some smoke envelops the apparatus, and once it clears, she awakes. For some reason, she turns to Rock and starts falling in love with him. Turns out she falls in love with the first person she sees, so Rock has to book it to not be married to someone who was and still is a corpse. After that, Victor and Gray get to be together. I really hope people don't freak out when they see her, otherwise they're both dead. Now that I feel I have completed enough quests, it's time to head back to Bloodstone and talk to Reaver. I make it there and have to find Reaver's mansion, which is not exactly a difficult task. Naturally, before he will have anything to do with me, he requires a favor. I have to take this seal somewhere in Wraithmarsh. I really didn't want to go back there, but oh well, there's nothing I can do about it. So I get over to Wraithmarsh, fight some more Hollow Men, and get stuck on a piece of geometry. I literally couldn't get out of that small area, so I had to fast travel, which of course means I have to fight a Banshee now. That fight was made all the more fun when a sizable group of Hollow Men came by to say hello. Once I deal with the Bunny Boys and banish the Banshee, I can finally move on and hopefully be done with Wraithmarsh for good. Luckily, it's not too far away, so I can get to the location without issue and without another fight. But if you thought all the fighting was done with, you'll be mistaken. When Rock makes it to this large room, there are shadow creatures to fight. There are several waves. They start as hobs, switch to humans, and then balverines. The hobs and humans were easy enough, but I started having problems with the balverines. At some point, there are 5 of them. Let's just say it's an easy way to get torn apart, as if you put yourself through a wood chipper. 2 of them started doing their annoying and long combo at the perfect time and knocked Rock out, which means I've lost my first life. I only have 2 left now. I was actually a little shocked, but then I remembered that blocking is not fun in this game, and I'm using terrible weapons on top of that. Eventually, I banish them all back to the Shadow Realm and can move onward. And it looks like someone has to sacrifice their youth in order for Reavers in the Shadow Court's deal to be complete. The only other person here is some woman who has no idea what the hell is going on. Rock decided to keep the seal that Reaver gave him and sacrificed his youth. Rock didn't see the purpose in screwing over an innocent bystander, though for whatever reason only the hair on his head changed to a white or gray color. Look at him. He used to be handsome once, believe it or not. With Rock not being full of vim and vigor anymore, it's time to head back to Reaver. Oh hey, British Jim Varney is here, and with his camera no less. And now British Jim Varney is dead. R.I.P. you poor bastard. While Reaver and Rock are having a conversation, there's a ruckus. Sounds like Lucian is coming after Reaver. So since the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I'll have to stick with him while we make our escape. It's not all that bad though, it's moderately calm all things considered. In this escape tunnel there are bridges and explosives aplenty, which makes it pretty easy to eradicate Lucian's men without breaking a sweat. Although a few of them did rush in the tunnel I was at. As you can imagine, it was a little rough since I was attempting to use melee in tight quarters. Good thing is the exit is pretty close by, and that means I don't have to deal with tunnels anymore. Emmer and Garth are also out here, but there's a slight issue with Reaver's plan. He was wanting to escape on a ship, and a great shard just sank into the bottom of the sea, which means we have to stand our ground and fight. But first, we have to fight off a wave of Spire guards. After that little scuffle, I can upgrade speed to the 4th level. Garth brought up the fact that Old Kingdom artifacts respond to magic, so he gets to work trying to find a spell that will open the shard up to damage. Garth eventually figures out the correct spell, and now I have to shoot at it with my pitiful pistol. As you have likely deduced, this will take a while. The shard is tanky and will continuously spawn in new enemies, and that makes this fight even more difficult than usual. It's kind of hard to aim at the big glowing orb when some guy hits you in the back with a sword. But if that wasn't enough for you, later on in the fight, it'll spawn little shards. With this fight, they're 10 times more annoying. The Great Shard will also fire at you while all this is happening. So here I am trying to juggle what feels like 30 hazards as I try to take down the shard. Regardless, at the end, I find the perfect opening and take that shard down. Doesn't seem so great when a rusty clockwork pistol can take it out. With the large battle over, we can finally recruit Reaver, who begrudgingly agrees to help us out. Since all the heroes have been collected, it's time to start a ritual. Apparently it'll aid us in taking Lucian down. We all get into position and a bright light blinds us. I guess this ritual kind of sapped the energy of Garth, Hammer, and Reaver. Something didn't go right though, and now Lucian is here to kill Rock and take the rest somewhere else. After the other 3 are taken, Lucian pulls out his flintlock and monologues a little bit. He then aims it, and our good boy Roll sacrifices himself to try to save Rock. Rest well, my friend. We shall see each other in the next life. After nonchalantly trash-talking Roll, Lucian aims his gun and shoots Rock. We then enter a dreamlike state. Rock is a child again, and Rose is here too. We seem to be living in an idyllic little farm or homestead. This section isn't very exciting as all there is to do is simply go around and do some small little tasks. Things like killing beetles, rounding up the chickens, and shooting some bottles that are placed all over the property. Normally I can't get everything done before the evening comes around, but this time I got everything done and time didn't seem to move. So I have to go to bed after everything is done. Rock wakes up and hears that music box from the beginning of the game. I have no choice but to go to it, otherwise I'll be stuck in a loop. Once Rock passes the gate, the atmosphere changes to something rather sinister. No idea why, but hey, it's a dream. Dreams are always weird. Anyway, I pick up the music box, and I get to see flashbacks of Rock at different stages of the game, while someone important says something. Rock then hears Rose's voice saying that he has passed the test and is ready to kill that crazed old man. Once Rock comes to, he finds himself in the Spire. When we make it to what I suppose is the central chamber of the Spire, Lucian has started the ritual we were performing earlier, or at least something akin to it. Rock pulls out the music box, which starts stripping the power of the others from Lucian. After all the power has been forcibly ripped away, a blinding bright light appears and fades away. Lucian tries taunting Rock, but since he killed Roll, Rock is having none of it, pulls out his rusty clockwork pistol, and shoots Lucian directly in the face. Now that he's gone, it's time to make her wish. We have three choices. Sacrifice, which will bring back all those that died in the making of the Spire. However, Rose and Roll will remain deceased. Love, which will bring Rose and Roll back from the dead, but leave all of the people who died in the making of the Spire dead. Or Wealth, which will provide a large sum of gold. Considering all these options, Rock chose Sacrifice. He and Roll are intrinsically linked, so they'll meet again at a later time. It was the best decision at the moment, which will ultimately make Roll's selfless sacrifice a good thing for everyone. And with that, Rock is returned to Albion. Before we close this tale for good, Rock got a letter saying that due to his noble decision, some organization erected a statue in his honor, and they captured his likeness perfectly. Now, the run is finished. This run was a trip down memory lane, and possibly gave me an idea for another run. If you'd be interested in seeing another Fable 2 challenge run, tell me down below in the comment section. This run took a little longer than I originally thought it would. To be fair though, I was using rusty weapons without upgrading strength or accuracy. It did take a bit to find the right strategy for certain battles, though it ended up consisting of spamming flourishes and executing enemies if possible. I suppose if I learned anything from this run, it's to not underestimate your enemies. Rock ended up taking a lot of hits and got knocked out once due to shadowy balverines tearing through him like he was wet tissue paper. Anyway, if you enjoyed this run, be sure to click or tap on the like button. If you want to see more challenge runs in the future, go ahead, subscribe, and set up your notifications so you have less of a chance to miss any new runs or updates. This has been Burnt Toaster from Burnt Toaster Productions, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.